Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Split, a young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Brian Cohen, the author of the Ted Saves the World series. That's Robert Scanlon. He's the author of the Dreamer Chronicles. That guy. He is in a warm place. I am in a cold place. How is Australia treating you on this fine Thursday morning for you?
Australia is treating me beautifully, thank you very much. The future is looking bright, so bright that I have to have the shades drawn. So, yeah, it's all good. I was just thinking, I wonder if we called it The Split because we split the world via hemispheres.
We really are splitting a lot of things. We're splitting hairs. We're splitting the hemispheres. Yeah. No, I think there could be. Maybe we'll make a contest. What are all the different reasons we call this show The Split? But we'll need listeners first, so we'll have to work on that part first. But today we're talking about the most popular book ever. It's not the most popular book ever, but it seems like that sometimes. Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Who doesn't know what this book is about at this point? Two teens with cancer who fall in love. Hazel Grace Lancaster meets Augustus Waters in a support group. They bond over Hazel's favorite book. Hijinks and health problems ensue in one of the most popular books of our current generation. So when you have 32,821 customer reviews on Amazon with a 4.7 star average, I think it's fair to say that you have a lot of people who love your book. I also loved it. There's comedy mixed in with tragedy, which is something I'm a huge fan of. Characters are well written. I know some people criticize them as too intelligent. I never really minded that too much. Simple descriptions, pretty easy to follow. Tragic, powerful, tear-filled climax. It's on everybody's shelf for a reason. Why is Fault in Our Stars on your shelf, Robert?
Wow. I feel like I've got nothing left to say after all that tumultuous description. That was amazing. Funny enough, when I first read the book, it was before the movie came out, and he had only the high 16,000s in the reviews, and already I was stunned. And then I watched it climb when the movie came out. You could just refresh it every day, as I'm sure John Green was probably doing. And still the average came through. And it is a book worth looking at the negative reviews for, because none of those things do I agree with. The negative reviews are as good a reason for reading it as any. Why is it on my shelf? Because I saw it up there and consistently being well reviewed, and I thought I have to know what is it that's catching people with this book. And it's a great title for a book as well. It's kind of intriguing. At first I thought it was science fiction, but then I quickly got over that. And I think, as you say, most people know or are perhaps aware of the story and aware that it's going to be even thinking about it now, Brian, it's going to be a tearjerker. There are more than a few places where I cried. I remember reading some of the very last few pages, and I was lying in bed, and my wife came into the room to, prepare herself to come to bed as well. And she started asking me, trivia sort of administration things. Did you remember to turn the light off? Did you do this? And I go, shut up! Oh, please, I'm trying to finish this last part.
I can't turn off lights right now. I just can't. Man.
So, I think, why is it on my shelf? I suppose because you kind of understand that it's a story that's going to tug at your heartstrings, and they're few and far between.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, something that's that well written, it's very concise. It's a short book.
It's a short book.
Short description. You don't have any. We recently talked about Ready Player One. There's no Ready Player One length descriptions in Fault in Our Stars. Even when they go to Amsterdam, you're not seeing a long descriptive passage of Amsterdam. It's focused on the characters, which I think it really works for this book. It might not work for all books to leave some of that detail out, but it certainly does for this, because you've got enough of a heart to the story that you don't need that. It's hard to criticize this book because almost everybody loves it.
Yes.
You don't need that sort of stuff when you've got a book that's this good. You just focus on your strengths and you rock it. And yeah, so any other thoughts as a reader, or should we go into this from a writer perspective?
I do have one thing, yeah, and again, it's to do with reading age as well. Particularly because my daughter and her friends, some of her friends have read the book, and they're in the 11 to 12-year-old age group, and I think this would very much depend on parental advice. As a parent, I've said no, because there are fairly graphic sexual references only in one scene. So you could even, if you really wanted them to read the book, you could probably even staple that scene together, and say, it was a bit hard if you got a Kindle, of course. Don't staple your Kindle.
Don't staple your Kindle.
And so I do think it depends on the maturity level of the reader. So just be aware that whilst it is, predominantly all about the love story and all about the tragedy and the comedy that goes along with their situation, there are definitely graphic sexual references in there. So I wanted to bring that to
Good point.
Our listeners' attention.
Yeah. Oh, good point. Definitely. So as a writer, I'm going to sneeze. Why don't you take this first?
I'll take this first one. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We'll have to edit your sneeze out and put it in the bloopers, Brian. My first takeaway, I think, as a writer is the intensity of seeing the world through somebody's eyes who has a problem or a situation that you have either never had or never want to have, is an extraordinary thing to do. John Green, obviously, he'd worked, I think, as a chaplain or a pastor, I believe, in terminal children's wards. But I do believe he'd said that this is a book he wanted to write for a long, long time, but just
I remember hearing that. Yeah.
Didn't really know how, and I can understand that, because it takes real courage to write from that perspective and get it right. So right that you've got an average of 4.7, 4.8 across 32,000 reviews. So nonetheless, that doesn't stop us from trying and learning from that. So that would be my first takeaway is, what does this sort of point of view do for you, both as a reader and a writer? Actually, as a reader, you're reading it thinking, oh my God, what would I be thinking and doing in that kind of scenario? And this is where I think the fact that they are very erudite, to me, is very believable. I mean, there are teenagers like that.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Of course there are. I was friends with a couple of those nerds. No, just kidding. I mean, I was. But anyway, well, my thought is, this is whether it be just a general description of as a writer or one of the three takeaways. When you have a hook that it goes this deep into people, when you have a hook that will make people want to read this book. I mean, you can't get more tragic and romantic than kids with cancer who fall in love. I mean, Green wrote a great book here, but I think even if he hadn't, it probably would have sold some copies, because it's the kids with cancer book.
Right.
And that's deep and potentially scary, and it taps into a lot of our fears, and we all have been touched by the disease, and we've all been in love, and so it really it has an infinite potential audience. And when you have 32,000 Amazon reviews, that shows that it really is reaching kind of an infinite audience. And so I think it's so important to have a hook that, I mean, if you're writing genre fiction, but if you're not writing genre fiction, if you're writing literary fiction that you want to appeal to lots of people, you need a hook that appeals to lots of people, or it's not going to get lots of people reading it. I mean, that sounds obvious, but I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, that's really well said. And can I expand on that just a tiny bit as well?
Please do. Please do.
Something occurred to me there is that we make decisions based on our emotions, and we don't really, we try to justify them with logic, oh, I'm going to buy this book because it's a top seller and it has 32,000 reviews. But actually, we're probably buying it for reasons more to do with our hearts. And when you talk about that hook, there was nothing really more strong about that hook than a really big emotional hook. And we read for emotion. We don't read a book because we want to feel the same as we did when we started it. We want to read a book because we want to feel happy, scared, sad, excited, pumped, you name it. And that's why we go to movies. So I think you're absolutely dead right. Don't be scared to make your hook one that is really an emotional hook, not just a logical one.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree.
I have a third takeaway as well.
Do it. I want to hear it.
This book has an obvious plot. We know it's two teens with cancer, and it's going to end in certain death because at least the protagonist has a terminal illness. So you kind of know that almost by reputation. So you think, well, how can that be an exciting book to read then? Because you know pretty much where it's going to end, at least for somebody. And how did he manage to do that? And the answer, I think, is that unexpected plot twists can be woven into any grand theme. And there are plenty of unexpected plot twists in this book. So even if you haven't read it yet and you think, it's teens with cancer and, someone's going to die, you'll be surprised. Read it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I've got a prompt if you want to hear it. If you don't, I won't say it. I won't.
You're just going to give me another book to write every time you have these prompts.
I know. Hey, well, hopefully that's multiple people listening come up with ideas, because that's what these prompts are all about.
I'd love to hear them.
All right. Fault in Our Stars is it's a story about two kids with cancer. How can you take that a step further? What would be the next logical step that's even more dramatic than the story of Hazel and Augustus? And why would people be interested in it? So that's the prompt. I used to do improv comedy. And one of the points of improv would be to heighten some of the past scenes, call them back, and find another way to make it even bigger. And you'd get to a point sometimes where you're a robot version of a superhero and you've blown up thousands of cities. You're going further, one step further from the craziest thing you've ever thought of.
Nice.
What's one step further than this? Take it another step. I'd be interested to see what we hear from that.
Oh yeah, and when you write it, do send us a copy, because I know it's just gonna break my heart.
Oh, poor Robert. His wife won't be able to ask him to do anything.
I can't do the chores.
Crying too much. I can't make the bed. I can't take our daughter to school. I can't do it. That's my terrible Robert impersonation, but just a Robert crying impersonation.
That's very good, yeah. We'll get you on the Australian accent eventually.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to screw it up quite yet. So
yeah, mate, this is The Split. It's a podcast.
Oh, I can't handle it. I'm behind the times. I'm literally behind Australian times. So this has been great. This has been The Split. It's a podcast. And we would love it if you guys subscribe to check out our weekly reviews, or if you took the prompt and wrote something, whether it be something flash fiction or something longer, put it in the comments, send us an email. We'd love to hear about it. And if you have books that you want us to read, we will probably read them, because you're going to be like one of 3 people emailing us. So check us out at thesplitbookreviews.com and visit our YouTube channel and our iTunes podcast. This has been great, Robert. For Robert Scanlon, I'm Brian Cohen. Please hang out with us every week, and we will see you for another review next time.
Goodbye.
Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to the Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.